I'm not sure how long this will work. All right, so let's look at the design of program counter. Okay, we know that program counter is required to point to the next section. Okay, so basically something is required to keep track of the next instruction to be executed. And this changes sequentially in case there is no branch or jump instruction, right? In case of branch, it's responsibility, of the assembler to calculate the branch address, right? Or if it's a PC relative addressing, then displacement from the current PC to the instruction where we are jumping to. So that displacement is a responsibility of assembler to calculate. Okay. We'll now look at how PC is going to be designed. So we know that in RISC-V we use byte addressable memory, and it means that one instruction side is 4 bytes. So every time the program counter has to change by 4, okay, to point it to the next instruction. So now let's try with this design. So we have value 4 here, which goes to one of the inputs of header. And this is a previous value of PC. And then we get PC plus 4 as an output. Okay, so do you think this design is okay? Okay, anyone?
Sir, there should be a delay between the input and output.
Delay. So what have that? Whatever input is available, PC and 4, it will become, after just very small time, it will become PC plus 4. And again, it will go in here, PC plus 4, and then it will become PC plus 8, right? So within a clock, there is no clock here, right? You can see that. So maybe whatever be the clock period, okay, then what next? So we have fixed that we have to have a buffer or okay, and now the register is clocked. So it means that in a clock cycle, only once it can change from PC to PC plus. Only edge of the clock, the value will go from input to output. All right. So what I was trying to say is that now we use buffer here or register here, and now this, because of this register, we know that register will trigger or work only at the rising edge of the clock. So whatever is the value at the rising edge of the clock, let's assume the value is, so this is the value of PC. Okay, so rising at as edge, it will take the value of PC and then a PC plus 4. Okay, and this PC plus 4 can go here, and it may actually, because combination circuit may take very less time, so it may change it to PC plus 8, but this PC plus 8 will not be triggered or will not go inside this latch until next edge comes, right? So it means that in one cycle, we can change PC to PC plus 4 only once. Okay, is it clear now? Okay. All right, so the slide shows the design that only at rising edge, current PC. So this is out at this point in time, let's assume point T, this point T. So at point T in time, the rising clock, this clock's leading edge happens, and then at that time we'll have to look at the value of PC. So value of this current PC. Okay, so that current PC will be okay. All right. So that current PC. Okay, so we'll go here. Okay, and this will be PC plus 4, right? So at leading edge, this transition will happen, and then the current value will change from PC to PC plus 4. Okay, and there is some delay because of the time the D type of latch will take to go from inside to outside. So that delay is shown here. Okay, and in the next cycle it will become PC plus 8. Okay, so this is very simple. That every through this diagram, what is trying to show is that every cycle, whenever the leading edge happens, then whatever value is available in the next PC that at this point in time in input it goes inside a register or is stored in register, and we know that after some time, because there is a delay, that input value becomes available at the output. So this transition is shown here. Okay, so we'll look at this all over again in the next slide. Okay, now the question is that how fast we can operate this? What is the maximum clock frequency at which we can run this? So we'll have to look at the delays, right? One delay that we know is that from leading edge of the clock, the result will be available only after some time, right? So let's assume there's a signal or this value here. This value will take some time to be available at the output port of this register, right? So there's one kind of delay. Second kind of delay is that this guy is also going to take some time. The combination circuit will take some time. Okay, then second kind of delay. And third delay we can see is that, for some time, because this guy is doing sampling, for some time this value, input value that's coming from here must remain stable. So let's look at these three concepts, right? Okay, before that, let's look at how camera works, right? I'm sure some of you would have taken photograph in SLR camera, single lens reflex, right? I mean, or maybe ordinary camera, which used to happen earlier. So now, if you have done SLR photography, then you know that before taking a picture, you have to press shutter for some few seconds. Shutter button, right? Okay, you let hold it. Okay, and the shutter will open for some time. Okay, and then it will take some time for that photo to appear on your screen. Okay, so you have to hold the shutter button for some time. So this is that period. This is called setup time. Okay, so this period is setup time. Okay. Okay, and then there is a time for shutter to work. Okay, and then after some time, similarly, in case of flip-flop, D-type flip-flop, we can see that we'll have to hold whatever the input, right? The D is the input here. So this D has to be stable. Let's assume transition, some value is changing. Earlier, some value was, let's assume, low, and then now it's becoming high. And this value must remain stable for some time for this flip-flop to operate, right? And it's called T setup time. Okay. And then this value must also remain stable for some time, that's called T hold time. Okay. So basically the input that we are giving, that's the value of D, must remain stable for T setup time and T hold time. And then after some time, this value will appear at output gate. That's a Q. So value of Q will change depending on value of D. And that time we call it from the trigger time or the clock leading edge time as T click to Q. T CLK to Q. Okay. So this is the time. Okay, now we can see that overall time that is required for sequential for this kind of circuit is some function of these three timings, right? Okay, and one more timing that we need to consider is basically there must be some some combination circuit around. Okay, so we'll look at that, right? So basically we have studied here 3 times. First is setup time, T setup time, the time during which D must not change before positive clock edge. Then T hold is a time during which D must not change after positive clock edge. So this is the time T setup, and this is the time that's T hold. Okay, and T click to Q is a delay after positive click edge, after which D appears at the output. So there is some delay from this point to the point where output should appear to Q. So from delay from D to Q, from leading edge, from if you start counting time when a positive edge happens, and till the time Q appears, so we call this as a click to Q. Okay, all right. So now let's, but in general, what we can say is that flip-flop don't work alone, right? There must be some circuit, So we can now treat this whole thing as a, because, in microprocessor, you just can't have a register state, right? So we have register, and note that we can change the state of register only once in clock period. Okay, and once the state changes, after that the work is done by combinational circuit. Okay, and it means, say for example, when you do addition, for example, addition, it means that 2 inputs will go from 2 registers, and register outputs are always available. Okay, and then ALU will sum them up, and the result will come back to be written onto a register. So all this work done by ALU, etc., which is nothing but combinational logic circuit, has to happen before the leading clock edge happens, and then it will take some time. Now we call that time as TCL. This is a combinational logic time for combinational logic. Okay, so now this is used, because as a state machine, we have registers, and there is always a feedback to combinational circuit, and there is some output. Okay, so now we can say that, so overall time that is taken, taken here is, first thing is that combinational logic time. Let's assume the previous output is available, and then it comes here, and if we calculate that, then we have TCL, and then there is a time from leading edge of the clock to when output appears. Okay, and then there is some setup time for which this it should remain stable. Signal should remain stable, right? So we can say that, and you can see all this relationship from this diagram. Okay, we will not go into it, but please just look at this way, right? Okay, from the leading edge, let's assume this is the leading edge that we are considering now. There has to be setup time where input signal must remain stable, and then that's here, and before that there is a TCL. Well, this time plus the time the signal must remain stable, plus time for signal to go outside. Okay, so these 3 combinations are here. Okay, so that is total time that's for this function to happen is T click to Q. That's first term. Second is TCL, which is the combinational logic time required by combinational logic. Now, of course, we will have to consider the worst case delay, right? And third is hold time. Okay, hold time is a time before leading or positive edge when signal should remain stable. So if you sum these 3, then this time all this work should happen within a clock period. Okay, so from the leading edge, if you think that this is the clock, okay, you can look at this for combinational circuit time. You can you can take it before in the like here we have taken first this time plus setup time plus clock, or alternatively you can say take this time plus sequential logic, combination logic time plus setup time. So anyway, you can look at in the diagram. So all these three activities must happen within this clock cycle. Okay, and this defines the maximum rate at which you can run the clock. If you shrink the clock too much, or you reduce increase the speed of clock too much, then if this activity is not able to complete, then design is bad, right? So basically, maximum rate at which you can run the clock is something which will be given by this equation. That is T minimum is equal to T setup time plus combination logic time. In case here we have adder. Okay. So T at time, which is combination logic time, plus T click to Q. Okay. That is time required from leading edge for a buffer signal in D flip-flop to appear at the output. Okay. And this defines the maximum frequency at which we can work, right? Because it's 1 by T minimum. Any question on this one? Are you there?
Yes, sir, we are here.
Okay. You are able to understand it? Any doubt?
Sir, here we are considering the upper bounds for every time, right? Because they won't be absolute quantities.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay,
right.
sir.
I mean, so for a combination logic circuit, you would have studied the maximum. See, there are many paths within combination logic circuit. Input can propagate to output depending on the design. Okay, so we are taking here the worst case delay that can happen in combination logic circuit.
Okay, sir.
Right? All right. Okay, so example here is that if let's assume the setup time is 15 picoseconds. Again, setup time is something that it means that we have to keep the signal, input signal stable before the positive edge. And then this is combination logic time, worst case time, which is T add. And click to Q is 10 picosecond, right? Now here, although in this is a trivial example, but you can see the relationship between the two, that the combination logic time is here the maximum. Nevertheless, so if we add this up, right, then you get the the T minimum. Okay, has to be less than. If you add this up, it's 90 plus 10, 100 picosecond. Okay, from this 1 by 100 picosecond gives you the frequency, which is 10 gigahertz. Okay, so the maximum frequency in which you can run this circuit is 10 gigahertz. All right, so this is just one example of one simple component for a microprocessor. And when we'll have to design the whole microprocessor or processor, then we'll have to look at many such things. Okay. All right. So let's move quickly into FSM. I'm sure you would have done it, but for sake of completeness, let's take up one simple example. Okay, when we are doing serial communication, okay, on a serial port, then I mean, where the actually data is starting, we should know, right? I mean, if you have studied layer 1 and layer 2, you would have possibly noticed that there is a preamble. Okay, it means that there is a sequence of bits, that the receiver must recognize to understand this is a preamble, after which actual data will start. Okay, so sometimes this is also used to synchronize clocks. Okay, but in general, in this example, we'll say that if there are 3 ones in a row, then the frame will start from there, right? Okay, so all right. So for example, here there are 3 ones. Okay, so this clock period, 1 second clock, third clock, and this time at the leading edge, when you sample this at leading edge or positive edge, here is 1. At this point time signal is 1, there is data is 1, at third clock edge is 1. So basically you have received 3 ones. Then you know that from next leading edge onwards, your data communication starts. Okay. So this is a basic one simple problem for which we'll have designed FSM, right? And it's very simple. I mean, when you can design FSM in following way. There are 3 states here: S0, S1, and S2. Okay, and we can see that when input is 1, and then it goes to state S1, and output is 0. And when again it receives a second one, then it moves to S2, and then output is 0. And when you receive the third one, then output is 1. Okay. Now from this point onwards, the data communication starts. Okay. For all other cases, when you receive 0, right? I mean, you are here and receive 0, you come back to the state. Similarly, when you are at S1, you receive 0. So it means the sequence at S1 is, first bit you received is 1, second bit you received 0, you come back here, and so on, right? So it's very simple state machine. Okay. And we can now create a simple truth table for it. I'm sure you would have done this design. So minimum number of states, of course, there are 3, but we'll have to code it for 4 because you will require certain number of bits to represent. So you need 2 bits minimum. So basically 4 states you can represent, but 1 state remains unused. And then you can easily create a truth table for this, right? When input is 0, whatever be the state, when the input is 0, the output is always 0, and you reach to the next state is 0. Okay, and similarly others, right? When it is state is 0, okay, 0, 0, S0 is nothing but 0, 0. So when you are in 0 state and you receive 1 input, the output the next state is 1, that is S1, and output is 0. So it's very simple to create this truth table. And then based on that, from truth table, you can always design your combinational logic circuit, right? So it's you would have done this design several times in the past. So we'll use exactly the same technique to design the circuit in our course, right? So basically, FSM model that we are going to consider is as follows. It's given in the book, Peterson-Hennessy book. So I've taken it from there. So we have combinational logic, and then we have state registers. Okay, and then state registers gives a state value, and from that we based on this present state, some functions based on the combinational logic circuit, we get certain outputs, and some values we take it to create the next state. Okay, so it's very simple. Now we will have to use this model for processor design. So basically what are we telling? We are telling that we have registers which define the state. It could be program counter. It could also be regular registers. Okay, now here we are not considering memory for time being. Okay, and then output of that register goes to combinational logic circuit, like addition, subtraction, all these functions we do in combinational logic circuit, and output again goes to state machine. Part of that output goes to state machine, part of that may be actual output. Okay, so that's very simple model that we are going to use. Now let's look at the very simple design of multiplexer, and then we'll look at design of adder, subtractor, and comparator. So now, we'll not go into detail. We'll try to finish it today itself, all this, because I'm sure you know this, right? So this is going to be your data path. This very, very skeleton or top view version of that. Okay, and we are going to use multiplexer at many places. For example, wherever you can see something is joining a bus, right? Or where there are multiple, joins, or where fork is happening, we are going to use some of these, multiplexers and demultiplexers, right? So I'm sure you understand the concept of multiplexer, right? So concept is very simple, that if multiplexer has multiple inputs and based on control signal, you'll have to select one of these. Okay. So here one input is A, second is B, and A is of course of n bits. Okay. Or you can consider it as 1 bit also for conceptual understanding. Based on this control signal, if it is 0, then A will go to output. If it is 1, then B will go to output. So it's very simple. Okay. And you can easily design multiplexer, right? I am sure you would have done this design. So we'll not go into detail. So it simply says that here, since you have only 2 inputs, you need only single bit as a control signal, right? So it could be 0 or it could be 1. When it is 0, then A, whatever is the value of A, will go out to output, right? So you can see when it is 0, these 4 values will come to the output. Okay, when it is 1, then B will go to output. So the value of B, which is here, will go to output. So it's very simple design, and you can always create a combinational logic circuit for this. So there is no brainer in this one. You would have done this, right? So you can create this combinational, this SOP, and from this you can always create combinational logic circuit. Similarly, we have here 4-to-1 multiplexer. Now, since we have 4 inputs, then you need 2 control lines. Okay, when control is 0, 0, then A will go to output. When control is 0, 1, then this will go to output. When control is 1, 0, that is this one, this will go output. When it's 1, 1, the D will go to output. It's very simple. You would have done this. Okay. Okay. How many rows will be there in this truth table? Anyone? Okay, that's fine. So let's, and you would have done then design of half adder and full adder. Okay, in half adder, we don't consider carry in, it's not there. And in full adder, we take consideration of carry in. Carry out anyways there in both, right? So it's extremely simple design. Okay, and you would have also seen there are 3 designs, 3 ways in which you can design multi-bit adder, right? It's a ripple carry adder, or carry lookup adder, and prefix adder. In processor design, we don't use ripple carry adder because very slow. We use carry lookup adder and prefix adders, one of the two, right? In general, we use prefix adders, although it's a little more complex, but takes, but it's faster. So design, so we'll represent full adder, a multi-bit full adder as follows, right? It has C in, carry out, and then 2 inputs, A and B. Okay. Okay, subtractor is exactly similar, right? The difference between adder and subtractor is that if one of the inputs, if you represent that in 2's complement form, then addition of second number in 2's complement form to the first number, what you do is subtraction. Okay, so what we can do is that the one of the inputs B here, we can invert. So that becomes 1's complement. And when you add 1 to that, then it becomes 2's complement, right? Say for example, you have 1, 0, 0, 0. Okay, or it's basically 5-bit, let's assume. Okay, and then 1's complement of this is 1, 0, 1, 1, 1. And if you add, so after this one, you get this inverted. And then you add 1 to this one. Then, this is through carry in. Then what you get is 2's complement. This is equal to 0, 1 plus 1 is 0, 1, 1, 0, this 0, 1, 1. So this 2's complement form available here. You add these 2, then you get the output here. Okay. So addition and subtraction is exactly similar. if you have some additional circuitry, these two. All right. Okay, any question? This must be revision for you. It's very simple stuff that you would have done. But I want to do it for the sake of completeness because we will use it. All right. Shall we move ahead? Are you there?
Yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay, then we have comparator. Okay, now we can do compare two binary numbers either with equity. It means that A is equal to B, then result should be true. Okay, or if A is less than B. Okay, so one is called equity comparator, second is called magnitude comparator. So we can easily create truth table for this and have a logic. Okay, so equity comparator is something if A and B are two numbers, four-digit numbers, and if they are same, then this will be true, and then we can have this kind of circuit. All right, so it's very simple, right? You can create. Similarly, less than 1, you can easily create. Okay, when A is less than B, then this becomes true. Okay, so I'm not going to go into details. Oh, okay. Actually, I have. Okay, all right. I have not included some other stuff I wanted to include in this. Nevertheless, so just give me a minute if I don't have stuff for. All right. Okay, so what we have studied today is essentially we have looked at multiplexers, adders, subtractors, and comparators. Okay, we have looked at how FSM we can design, because whole control logic that we are going to create will work on. Basically, you have to create FSM for that. Okay, from the FSM we have to create a combinational logic circuit. Okay, and then we'll have to fit in, because combinational that control unit will generate control signal and will also trigger state changes. All right, so in general we have looked at these three: program counter, multiplexer, adder, subtractor, and comparator. Okay, so all this we have studied. You can see this, right? Screen moving?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so all this we have completed today. Okay, so next thing that we need to design is ALU. Okay, and ALU design will require the following. It will require adder for addition, for subtraction, then AND operation and OR operation. So this is a minimum functionality that we are considering now in ALU design, right? So basically we'll have here, we can represent ALU in this form. Okay, this one. Okay, and we have ALU control. Okay, and based on the ALU control signal, which is whether it's a 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, or 1, 1, we are doing the functions here in on value of A and B. So if if it is 0, 0, we are doing addition. If it is 0, 1, then we are doing subtraction. If it's a 1, 0, then we are doing AND function. And it's 1, 1, then we are doing OR function. Okay. So ALU, okay. So now look at this way. Okay. Okay, so this is the basic design. Okay, can you understand how does it work? Okay, so what A is coming directly to ALU, right? So this is basically for summation. It's the adder and subtractor in general, right? Okay, and then B input has two things. If simple A plus B operation, then this multiplexer will select and if you give control signal as 0, okay, so ALU control signal is 0, then B will directly come as it is here. So then you can perform summation, that's an addition function. Okay, if this control signal here, ALU control signal here is 1, then you will invert this. Okay, and then you have 1's complement here, and ALU control is 1, which can be considered as carry in, and then you get 2's complement number here. Okay, so you perform the subtraction function. Now, if you are if control signal is say 1 0, okay, ALU control. So this is the ALU control here. Okay, if it's a 1 0, then you are doing AND function. So essentially here there is another multiplexer, and then you are doing A and B is being done by this AND gate, and then this output goes to the result. If it is 1 1, then you're doing OR function. So you take value of A and B from here, like this is A and the other is B, and then you do OR function, and then you select 1 1. It means that this one is selected for the output. So you do OR function. So by putting proper value of control signals, okay, whether 0 0 0 1 1 0 and 1 1, we can perform these 4 functions in the ALU. Okay, all right. So then let's move ahead, right? Similarly, we can do. Okay, all right. So this shows, in case we have to do A and OR function, then A or B function, then we can, it's nothing but we can easily do, because it shows what are the control signals that are generated. Okay, that we have discussed in previous slides. Similarly, when you do A plus B, that we have discussed earlier, then it shows a control signal that we are going to generate, and the result will come to output. And then we can have also a status flag. Okay, when result is negative or result is 0 or carry out and overflow. So all these 4 flags can be here. All right. So all right. So this is something that is very simple that we have studied today, right? Because you have already done it, and we will. Okay. And then, of course, you would have studied the critical path, which is the worst case delay scenario in case of combinational circuit, right? Okay. And as someone has asked this question, that we'll have to consider the critical path when we try to find out the clock speed, right? Maximum clock speed. All right. So within a combinational circuit, you'll have to find out the worst case delay or worst case, and then based on that, we'll have to, design clock or some other circuits. All right. So, okay. So now we are at the stage where we can design a processor. Okay. So in order to design a processor, what we'll do is that we'll look at each instruction. Okay. And for that, we'll have to select set of data path. We have to create a data path basically by selection of components and establish clocking methodology. Okay. And then we'll have to assemble data path meeting the requirements. All right. And analyze implementation of each instruction to determine the setting of control points that affect the register transfer. Okay, and so basically we remember that sometime back when we looked at LC2 or LC4 computer, right? Then we looked at how different control signals are generated, right? Same thing we have to do here. Look at each instruction, and then we'll see what control signals are required at the different places, right? For example, for ALU, we'll have to give control signal for addition and subtraction or logical AND and OR that we have seen in the slide just a few minutes back. Okay. Similarly, when we are using multiplexers, then those multiplexer are to be given a control signal such that it will select appropriate input. All right. Okay. All right. So based on this, we will have to create a data path. All right. So we'll look at these one by one. Okay. First instruction that we are going to take is add and subtract. Okay. And you know the format of that is add. RD is destination register, source register 1 and source register 2. Okay. And the format is here, right? This opcode 7 plus 3 bits define the operation. Okay. And then we have destination register, source register 1 and source register 2. Okay. I'm sorry. There's opcode field also is opcode here, function 3 and the 7 bits here. Okay. And then we have 3 registers. Okay. So, okay. All right. So at this point, let's stop. Okay. And then from here onwards, we'll start in the next class. That's tomorrow. Any question up to this point?